And welcome back to the Steve Malzberg Show, ladies and gentlemen. And joining us right now is Congressman Tim Huelskamp. Hello, Congressman.
Well, good afternoon.
Always good to talk to you. So, what can we expect? You know, going into the State of the Union, we already have the dribs and the drabs. We kind of know what the president's going to say for the most part. And he's already used his pen, as he likes to say today, to increase the minimum wage for federal employees. Let me ask you that. What does that do to a spirit of bipartisanship or a possibility for working together when he does this, like in your face, right before the State of the Union, when, you know, you may not have voted for it, but there was an agreement reached. There was a budget deal reached. They're talking about immigration reform. I hope they don't do it. So it seems like there is a spirit of being willing to work, but even then he just takes the pen out.
Well, I think he's trying to distract from the real issue, and that's this failed economy. And put together a list of figures. You know, I don't think we're going to hear tonight. The main one I want to focus on is the fact there's 24.2 million Americans looking for a full-time job. His policies has failed. And I think what he's trying to do is distract people from the failure of his economic policies and Obamacare. But it is a very serious threat. When the president's decided he's going to become like a dictator, ignore the law. We see that happening already. That's happened for a number of years, happening specifically in Obamacare, in which he says, I'm going to suspend parts of my own health care law. I mean, it's outrageous. It's lawlessness. And but again, it's a distraction from 1,834 failed days of Obama policies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, so far compared to 5 years of Bush, 5 years of Clinton, and Obama is below that number of the other two through 5 years. And but as you said, what this president has done in not only selectively enforcing a health care law and other laws on immigration and on welfare, but also, you know, he's basically use his EPA and other agencies to also, if not, you know, kind of circumvent the law or kind of invoke policies that are going to be very restrictive and have great impact on this country. I don't recall those kinds of use of executive order and agencies by either George W. Bush or President Clinton.
Well, if you look at what candidate Obama promised to do, this is exactly what he was complaining about. That the president was acting unilaterally outside the Constitution. You know, we heard that again and again. What we see right now is him doing much, much more than he ever worried about when there was a President Bush. I mean, specifically on health care law, he isn't doing it by executive order. He's essentially directing Kathleen Sebelius to ignore the law. If you're a big business, the president said you're exempt. If you're a labor union, don't worry about it. If you're any other ally or political donor, don't worry. You know, immigration, same thing. And you know, and the rightful question I get from constituents is, what difference does Congress make if the president's going to issue executive order or ignore the law or direct his bureaucrats to do the same? And it's a real threat to our Constitution.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you expect tonight from him?
Again, more diversions, distractions. He's not going to talk about 5 million Americans who've lost their health care and health insurance because of Obamacare. He's not going to talk about the bad economy. It will be interesting to see after, again, 1,834 days, who he can blame. I think he wants the American people to forget he's been president for 5 years. It's not working. Thousands and millions of families. You know, we have 13 million more Americans on food stamps today than there were when he took office. You know, I think he's going to attempt to distract us, divide us, and again, divert our attention from his failed policies.
We're talking to Congressman Tim Huelskamp, 1st Congressional District of the state of Kansas, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Let's talk about this immigration reform. I mean, I read so much about how there's a kind of a yesterday where he feels that the leadership of the Republican Party may wait until the deadline for congressional challengers. You know, if someone wants to challenge an incumbent, they have to register at some point in April. They may wait until after that deadline is passed and then go ahead with immigration reform and not have to face a challenge because of what they did. I mean, have you heard that? Are you concerned about that?
Well, the filing deadline varies state to state. Certain deadlines have already passed in the state of Texas, the state of Illinois, for example. My home state of Kansas, it's not till June, and so a long ways to go. But the American people are not stupid. They know what this Congress is probably going to try to do. But I tell you, 12 months ago, when the Republicans went on retreat, it was the intention. It was the push of our leadership to promote an amnesty bill, and it failed miserably in the conference. We didn't want to do it. It'll be interesting to see if they promote and push that again. But what I see is an incredible ability of inside the Beltway Republicans who've tried this again and again are going to try to push something and grab the defeat from the jaws of victory. I mean, if you want to divide the Republican Party, this is exactly the way you do it. It might not divide the Beltway, inside the Beltway, but as far as real Republicans, real Americans, they don't want an amnesty bill. You know what? They don't want to see it on the floor of the House. And any Republican who's quiet, who's silent about it, their opponents are going to know exactly what they're about. So they got to speak up now, or people are going to assume they're for amnesty.
Congressman, is it all about business, big business, donors and leaders coming to the Republican leadership and saying, we want this? Because aside from a financial gain that I don't really understand, I guess there's donors and I understand that, but aside from a financial gain directly to these congressmen for campaigning and other, I don't see any upside, not one single upside. It's going to create more Democratic voters. No matter how far you give in, you're going to be portrayed as the bad guys because you didn't go far enough. You're going to bring more workers into the country, high-skilled and low-skilled, when there aren't jobs for high-skilled and low-skilled now. I don't see any upside. So is that it? Is it all about money that will eventually go to the coffers of congressmen? Explain it to me.
I believe that's part of it. I believe it's about big business. It's about K Street, about inside the Beltway. But there's one thing that hasn't been talked about. I think fundamentally Republicans don't get out of Washington enough. And everybody they seem to be talking to, which is themselves and their staffers and lobbyists and the media, I mean, they're hearing the same thing, but this is a fundamental problem, not just on immigration, but on tax policy. They're not doing anything on tax policy either. And here they are. I just don't think they're listening. And so fundamentally, I think it's, as Ted Cruz said last fall, they're not listening. They're not listening again. This happened in 05 and 06 and got beat over their head, and then they tried it again, and they pushed it. Some Republicans pushed it in the Senate and helped that along. And here we are. The question I ask, if it was so good, and this is a question for the Democrats as well as the Republicans, why didn't the president push it when he had the votes? He wants the Republicans to send him a bill, I believe, so he can veto it, blame the Republicans. Nothing gets done except Republicans get the blame. But at the end of the day, this divides the party. Everybody knows that up here, but there are some people, including members of leadership, that would like to divide Republicans and get rid of those rascally Tea Party conservative Republicans and get back to the business of spending money. And I think this is why they're even talking about it.
Do you think Boehner will remain as Speaker, either by choice or through other means, into the next Congress?
I'm not for certain what he plans on doing, but every indication I've seen is he's going to cash out, and there'll be a race for a new Speaker. And there are a lot of names out there, and I'm looking for somebody who's not a Beltway insider.
How about Congressman Tim Huelskamp?
Well, probably not. Probably not.
By choice or by matter of fact? Why not? Would you be interested?
I would not. I've got 4 kids under 18, and there are things to focus on, and it's tough enough doing this job.
So give me a name.
Understand what the core of the Republican Party is and understand that this president's not willing to negotiate. You've got to defeat him. You've got to beat him. You've got to push back. You've got to fight for legislative priorities. You've got to fight to make sure that people are heard. It's not a respond game. We got to go on offense.
Then one more quickly,
for a leader like that.
I'm sorry. One more quickly for you, talking about fighting the president. Where do you think you're going to go on the debt ceiling? I mean, I heard Mitch McConnell over the weekend on the Sunday show say we got to get something in return. But here we go again. Mitch McConnell, when they gave in the last time, said, "Oh, we'll never do that again." John Boehner said, "Oh, what a mistake." Oh, instead of saying I don't know if I ran this by you last time. Instead of saying we gave in, but we gave in for the good of the American people, the good of the country, because we had a president who was going to take us to a point where we've never been before because he doesn't care about the country. He just cares about playing politics. Instead, they waved the white flag and said, "Ooh, we made a mistake." And now I hear McConnell saying, "Oh, we have to get something." And I'm wondering, what does he think he's going to get? The president's going to give him nothing. Are they willing to let the government shut down again? Not that they would shut it down, but are you guys willing to let it get to that point again, or where do you think it's going to go?
Well, instead of going after the president, what we saw at the end of the last debate and discussion about debt and spending on a $600 billion deficit was our leadership in the House blamed it on conservative Republicans, blamed it on the folks that are outside the Beltway, and said it's all their fault.
Yeah, Boehner did that. Yeah,
president.
Crazy.
That's what they did. That's crazy. That's how you go from a majority to a minority. That's how you take it. You lose the advantage. I really think we're going to keep the House, Steve. But the question I raise is, what would we do even if we got a majority in the Senate? What momentum would we have if we're sitting here always on our heels, always trying to defend a little smaller government? No, we should be defending our principles of liberty and fighting for freedom and opportunity. This should be the great opportunity party. It's definitely seen far too often as the grand old party that's playing the same old games and not doing anything with the majority. So, I mean, we need to be aggressive. It's an attitude. It's a desire. It's actually, we've got a lot of fire amongst our Republicans, not just to keep the House. The goal isn't keeping a House or getting the Senate. The goal is changing policy and getting our country up and running again. And far too often we get lost in these games that you're going to see on TV tonight.
Right. And what does that mean for the debt ceiling fight? Just one more time. I mean, do you think
not very much is going to happen?
Blank check?
A blank check, another $1 trillion in exchange for sometime in the future.
Yeah.
You know, the fact is, it's immoral to put $1 trillion of debt on our children and grandchildren and get nothing for it. That's probably likely what would happen.
Yeah. Hey, Congressman, thank you for your time. I know you're busy, and we'll speak to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Congressman Tim Huelskamp, ladies and gentlemen, from the great state of Kansas here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I love talking to him, because he's not the establishment, and he's not afraid to say what's on his mind and say he thinks Boehner's going to cash it in from what he's heard, to quote Congressman Huelskamp. And chance. I hope it's not Cantor. I hope it's not McCarthy. I hope it's not one of the establishment Republicans who are going to do the same old thing. And he makes a great point, and this should be stressed, and I don't think it's stressed enough. And, the media would have you believe, that the Republican Party's in trouble. The Republican Party's divided. The Republican Party this, the Republican Party that. They have to change. They're the party of old white men. The Republican Party control the House. The Republican Party very likely will control the Senate. The Republican Party control the majority of governorships in this country, and the majority change. Because when it comes to running for president, we haven't put up a candidate who's had the guts and the wherewithal to express himself and attack as he needs or she needs to attack. And combat the media and recognize that the media is there as an impediment for a Republican presidential candidate because we haven't won the White House in 2 elections. The Republican Party is dead and has to change? At the expense of what? At the expense of losing the House? At the expense of losing the governorships? At the expense of losing the state houses? Change? And for what? To become more like the Democratic Party? I mean, come on. But do you hear Reince Priebus say this? No. You hear him say, yeah, we got to watch what we say about women. Enough. We're coming back. Steve Malzberg Show, Tuesday edition, State of the Union night on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax TV and radio.